Hey guys, it's Kevin again. This is going to be my review for Bloodline Season 1, Episode 2. Now, I know that I missed last week's episode. I told you guys I'm trying to do once a week. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to review Episode 2 and Episode 3 this week, and that's how I will do it, because I would have reviewed Episode 3 anyways, and Episode 2 I missed, so I'm going to do back-to-back Bloodline reviews. But let's just get into this episode because it was amazing. This episode was 10 times better than the series premiere. I mean, I love the series premiere, but this episode was so much better because it gave us so much more depth to the characters and it made me more interested in the story, and that's what an episode 2 should do, and I love that. So let's just get into this episode because it was amazing. So, we open with, we see this pouring rain and this giant hole in the window of Kevin's office, and all we hear is we hear another voiceover from John, and he basically talks about how Kevin, people calls his brother Kevin the hothead of the family, and people used to tell John that he was like his father, but he's not the same man now, and nothing is the same now, and I really love these flashbacks. I mean, these, voiceovers are so intriguing, they make us more interested in the story, and just shows how different things are. So we then go back to the end of the last episode. We briefly saw last episode where John takes Danny to the bus. We all know, but we see that Danny does not get on the bus. He walks down the road to Eric, of course, who Eric, as I said, is basically the person that's putting him on a bad path, and Eric pulls up alongside him. They seem to be up to something very shady. We don't know what it is, though. Whatever it is involves gasoline tanks. We don't really know what they are up to, though, and we don't find out, and it's very intriguing that way. So when they're finished, Danny asks Eric what happens next, and Eric stresses that this is a job not to mess up because they are dealing with with very bad people, and Eric tells Danny that he can stay at Eric's sister's for the night. So I thought that was really interesting. The thing is, though, that's what's going to lead to Danny's demise, is him hanging out with Eric. It's pretty clear that that's what's making him do all these bad decisions, is Eric. I mean, Eric is not the right person to hang out with. He's not giving you good choices or anything. Like, you should not be hanging out with him, but he is, and whatever. So, Kevin is left with the task of telling his dad that Danny left, and Rob is concerned only for Sally's feelings, and it seems that Sally drives Kevin. Basically, Kevin's wife drives Kevin back to his office, where it quickly becomes apparent that Kevin's hiding the fact that they are no longer together, and I thought that was really interesting. We find out that Kevin and his wife are actually not together anymore, and basically he wishes this wasn't so, and he hasn't told his family. And he says these things and his wife is talking about how these things happen, and he's like, not in my family, and it's really sad overall. I like the development we get with Kevin in this episode. We get a lot more focus on him. So, John comes home, looks really tired and sad till he realizes that the kids are out of the house, and he has sex with Diana, and I thought that was a good scene overall. So, Rob and Sally relax on the porch, and we basically Rob breaks the Danny departure news to Sally, and I like what she says, that she's had it. She tells him that, I don't care. I've given up on him. I can't take this anymore. I'm done with him. And that's understandable. I mean, all he did was mess up things for the family, and he's such a disaster area. He's literally a walking disaster area that I don't blame Sally. I really don't. I understand why she said that. So the next morning, John is at the coroner office and views the dead body that they pulled out of the water, and there are burns all over her body, though her official cause of death is drowning. And John basically realizes that means she was alive for the burning, which is really fucked up overall, and I don't really know what's going on there. So Danny wakes up to Eric's sister, Chelsea, who is tossing pebbles at him, and he gives her a smile, and basically we see that they actually do have some chemistry, and we see that they have a lot of chemistry here, and she even flashes her ass at him, and she walks into the house to make coffee, and you can see that these two definitely are starting to get very close. So Robert sees kayaks around a small inlet and sees his eldest son standing on the shore. And Danny tells his dad that he wants to say goodbye since he won't be coming back anymore. And Danny says he wanted to work things out before Rob dies. What? Now, I'm like, that's insane. And this really sets the tone for the rest of the episode, which really, I loved what most of this episode focused on, and that is, did Danny actually hurt Robert? Because then we cut to a hospital where Robert was in some sort of accident and is in the ER for head trauma, and I'm just like, something had to have gone down between Danny and Robert. What it is, we don't know yet, but basically they're all there. Maggie's there, Danny's there, obviously, John's there, and Sally's having a hard time accepting how serious a situation this has become. And Kevin seems mainly concerned with yelling at Danny, because that's what Kevin cares about, is Danny. He doesn't want Danny in his life, he doesn't want Danny to be any part of this, and he can tell that Danny is responsible. And that's one of the things I love about Kevin, is how much he hates Danny. And Danny says that Rob was in his kayak and then just collapsed, and the whole family's like, what the fuck are you talking about? There's no way that's true. And his story is not believable. I'm sorry, it's not. All the stories that Danny comes up with in this episode, they all sound like bullshit. There's not a single story that sounds like it could be true, and there's nothing I really trust. I don't trust Danny, like, whatsoever. So Kevin, Meg, and John gather in the hallway, each taking on who's I said Maggie, I meant Meg. Basically, they're each taking on their familiar roles, and Kevin's losing it with anger, and John is pacifying, and basically Meg cancels the ceremony and goes to attend to the details of the family business. And Meg says that Danny didn't hurt Dad, and she doesn't think that he would have done that, and basically, I like seeing the family. That's one of my favorite things about the show, is seeing the siblings' reactions to Danny. I mean, Kevin is all, he did it, we're going to get him, we're going to find out who did it. And John is like, okay, maybe he didn't do it, we need to think more about this. But, Meg is more like, well, definitely he didn't do it. And I like seeing their reactions to it. They're very different reactions, and they all react very differently. And I love that. It's one of my favorite things to see about the show so far. So Danny and Sally are in the waiting room. She confronts him about leaving without saying goodbye. He tells her that he didn't want to leave, but that his father didn't want him to be around. Everything he says now in this episode makes me feel really uneasy. It really does. And I love that this episode did that. I mean, literally, anything that Danny said seemed very sketchy, because we know that something went down between him and his father. We don't know what it was. You can know that something went down there, and we just don't know what it is yet. So Meg and John come back with news of CAT scans, and Meg whisks Sally around, and John invites Danny to come talk outside, and Danny pops a pain pill in preparation, and basically, John and Kevin take on Danny about what he was still doing in town, because he was supposed to go on that bus, and he didn't leave. So they don't know why he's still there. They don't want to, they want to know, obviously, why he's still there. They don't know why he's still there, though. And basically, they want to know how Rob got hurt as well, because while some of them think that he didn't do it, they still think that he definitely is a suspect of who could have hurt, of why Rob could have gotten hurt. So Danny sticks to his story, saying that he and their dad chatted briefly, and then Rob got in his kayak and collapsed, and John and Kevin are not buying it. I mean, it doesn't make sense. What he's saying, it just doesn't, you don't just collapse out of a boat. It doesn't seem believable at all, especially because of how dangerous Danny is. I mean, Danny's like a loose cannon. He really is. I mean, you can tell he's like a loose cannon. He'll go off at any point, and you see that definitely in this episode. And that was really well done the way they showed that, and I definitely really enjoyed that when they showed that. Really, really good stuff there. So things are getting really heated. Everyone's yelling. Then John blows his top at Kevin, mostly because he doesn't think that Kevin is jumping. He thinks Kevin's jumping to conclusions and everything, and they scatter when a nurse comes out, and John takes the opportunity to check on a parole, and that parole's name is, of course, Eric. That's who he is investigating, because, of course, Eric is the one that's making him do all this. So Eric's trying to reach Danny with no luck, and that's because Danny's with the doctor, and this scene was really weird. I mean, Danny's just yelling at this doctor, and basically, she's showing him his x-rays. She says, while nothing is broken, there is an injury, a fracture that never healed, that gives him chronic pain. He says it happened via drunk driver, and he's in pain, and he needs his prescription pills filled ASAP, and the doctor relents, probably because she doesn't want to yell at, she doesn't want him to yell at her anymore. At this point, all he's doing is yelling at her. He's like, do your fucking job, what are you doing, what are you talking about? Like, he's just yelling at her constantly, and Danny calls him as soon as he's out, and Eric is not having it. Danny tries to placate him by offering him his family's boat, and you can see that that's not going to end well. I know that's not going to end well. You can tell it's not. I mean, Eric is already so unstable and Danny's unstable. There's no way that's going to work out well. So Sally, meanwhile, is freaking out because they have incoming guests, and Meg is trying to say, they should not worry about that and everything, but the thing is, when you have a successful inn, you're going to have guests, so you have to worry about that. So Meg heads to the hotel and micromanages in a way that seems to set some employees' teeth rightfully on edge, so that's going well. So John fills Diana in on the latest, and that Robert might have had a stroke while on the water. He's trying to think of some possibility other than Danny might have hurt their father. He's trying to think of some other possibility. And he's saved from answering about whether he thinks Danny had something to do with it by a call from his colleague Chuck, who Eric apparently never showed up for work. And John's face is just like, of course he didn't. And one of the things I like about John is that he doesn't trust Eric, but he does sort of trust Danny. Like, he cares about Danny, and that's why he doesn't trust Eric. He wants nothing to do with Eric, because he knows that he's hurting Danny, and he's ruining his life and everything, and I love seeing that. So the doctor stops him to chat, and which seems like, and basically she tells him that Danny seemed to be displaying some drug-seeking behavior and that he may be addicted to these pain pills. And she throws in the hit and run injury, and John comes apart a little bit, and we get a very dramatic reenactment of a boy being chased out of the house. And it's clear that it's Danny being chased by Robert, and I thought that was really interesting when we found that out. I mean, I want to see more flashbacks there. I want to find out more about Danny, but we didn't find out anything yet, and I like that we're not finding out anything. It's a very slow-paced show, but the thing is, it's so intriguing that that's what I love about Bloodline. It's really working out perfectly there. So Kevin's wife brings him clean clothes and expresses sympathy for what's happened to Robert, and Kevin is like, I don't buy it, and she basically is trying to tell him to take a deep breath and cool off, and I like what she's trying to do. I mean, you can see that she's trying to help him not be... I mean, Kevin also is a loose cannon. He doesn't trust Danny whatsoever, and if anyone doesn't believe him, he gets all pissed at them and everything. But I like that she's telling him to cool off, because he shouldn't jump to conclusions. He should think that maybe Danny didn't do it, because there's a possibility Danny didn't do it, and they need to think more of the possibilities of what could have happened there, and I like seeing that. So Chelsea's hanging out home watching a game show, and John shows up, and John's saying, what did my brother do now? Because he doesn't know what's going on there. And Chelsea is not happy to see him, of course, and basically she doesn't want to get him or Danny into trouble, but John basically says that his dad's in the hospital, and he's just trying to, basically get her to listen, and Chelsea doesn't know anything. She has no idea what happened, and it's true, she doesn't know what happened. I mean, why would Chelsea know? Chelsea had nothing to do with it, and John is completely frustrated. All he wants to do is find out some information, and no one is giving him information. And he leaves, and she calls him a prick, and Danny then picks up the family boat, and I knew this was giving me a terrible idea. I mean, he and Eric bring in gasoline cans onto the island, and Eric doesn't tell Danny what they are doing, who they are doing the job for exactly, and that right there says you should not work with him, because clearly he's not telling you anything. It's not probably the best thing to follow him. Just a word of advice. It's not the best thing to do that. So Robert is still unconscious in the hospital, and Sally tells Kevin that they're going to do another scan because, Kevin had come to see Sally, and Sally basically says that they're going to do another scan, and Sally wants to know why Kevin always assumes the worst when it comes to Danny. By the way, one of the things I love that they do with Sally is we constantly see Sally looking back. She's really worried about Robert. She's worried that he's not going to recover, and basically, Sally wants to know why Kevin always assumes the worst when it comes to Danny, and my thinking here is, though, you wanted to get rid of Danny, although I think she wanted to get rid of Danny out of out of their lives, because she wants him to change for himself, and she doesn't think that, they can help him change or anything, and I feel like Sally just, while she doesn't want Danny in her life, she does want him, she does think that he can change. I feel like that's what's going on there, because, I mean, parents always assume the best in their children, so I feel like that's what's going on there. So, basically, Kevin calls John, and of course, basically Kevin's all upset at Sally because she didn't want Danny to come home and everything, and you see that they start to get into a fight, and then Kevin calls John and yells at him for letting their father take the fall on that decision, and Kevin thinks this gives Danny a motive to smash up their dad, which is, I mean, that's understandable why he thinks that. And Sally watches a doctor look at her husband's charts and worries about the worst. She's really worried that he's not going to make a recovery, and she's very concerned. So Kevin is playing detective with some local fishermen to see if they know what happened between Danny and Robert, and the fisherman says, basically the fishermen stay quiet till some cash is offered, because he says, I'll give you cash if you tell me what's going on. But what they tell him doesn't exactly help. All they say is that they were thrashing and maybe they were fighting, and till Danny asked them for help. So basically they told him nothing. They told him nothing that is of interest, nothing that he really cares about, and we don't really know what's happened. So John is being visited by ghosts. He was remembering that Danny maybe got his ass kicked by their father, and it's unclear if that happened. And basically, Sally comes to John and tells him that she wants Danny to come home. And I like that she said that, because I'm just thinking, well, you did want him to come home. I think now she wants him to come home so he can reconnect with the family, and, basically it says it will mean more coming from you, and you know how he feels about you. And it's true. I mean, John and Danny are the closest by far. I mean, Sally and Danny aren't close. The only people that are close are John and Danny. Like, John really is more of a father to Danny than Robert is. So I like that Sally said that he should come home, because honestly, it might just be the best thing to do. So Johnny confronts Danny about what he's up to with Eric, and it turns out that basically John loses, he ends up spilling his pain meds all over the place, and John is losing steam at the sight of his pathetic behavior, but not Kevin. He comes charging down, yelling about their dad, and Danny is just like, I hit him over the head with a fucking paddle, and basically they start fighting, and John and Sally seem to be having the same flashbacks to what now seems like might be the days when perhaps Rob used to beat the hell out of Danny. So you can see why Danny might be so affected, because apparently Robert abused Danny, and John is pissed at him and everything, and basically they're all basically fighting around, and it's insane. But then the end of the episode, I love that they show this, because they eventually had to show this. We actually get to see what happened between Danny and Robert. Danny told Robert that he wanted to make things right and that he had been angry. So when John told Danny that their father didn't want to come home, basically he says, the kind of anger, Dad, the one, and he goes on to say that whatever his father's holding on, he should let go because Danny's moving on. Robert thinks on this, walks away, gets back into the boat. He admits it wasn't his call, it was John, Kevin, and Meg. It was them that didn't, and I like that he told him that it wasn't me. They didn't want you back. And he paddles off, indeed seems to slump overall on his own, and it's apparently Danny didn't hurt him, which I thought was an interesting twist here. I thought, and I love that they did that, because I thought they were going to show that Danny hurt him, but no, Danny did not hurt him. Nothing happened between them. He fell over on his own, and Danny is just very misunderstood, and it's probably just because of the people he's hanging out with. So basically, we see that did not happen, but the problem is, I'm pretty sure that John, Kevin, and Meg think that Danny did hurt their father, and it really goes with the end of the episode, because we see John's voice back. He says, could this have all been avoided? Or probably, and I'm thinking that in the present that John now knows that Danny did not hurt their father, but if that's why John kills Danny, I can totally understand that. And we flash forward and we see Kevin hands John a gun and basically tells him it's untraceable, and that's how the episode ends. So overall, amazing episode. Absolutely love this episode, and I love where the show's going, because now we know that Danny's misunderstood. He didn't hurt their father, and I think that's really interesting that he didn't hurt them. Now, are John, Meg, and Kevin going to find out about this? Do they already know that Danny didn't hurt their father? I'm very interested in seeing what's actually going on there, because I think it's just really interesting and intriguing overall. Is Robert going to be okay? I mean, Sally's really concerned about Robert, so we have yet to see Robert in the present, so I don't know if Robert's going to be okay or what's going to happen to him. Maybe he'll make a good recovery. Who really knows what's going to happen there? The real problem with Danny is Eric. Danny needs to stop hanging out with Eric. Eric clearly is not the right person he should be hanging out with. As much as he likes Chelsea, as much as they connect really well, he should not be hanging out with Eric, because Eric is not the right person for him to be hanging out with. So I think that's really interesting. My other question here is how, now that Danny is coming back, is this the right thing to do? To have Danny come back into their lives? Do you think they're doing the right thing there? I really don't know if that's the best thing for them to do, is to bring Danny back into their lives. I just really don't know yet, but we'll see what happens there. What else is there? What else is there to think about? Overall, guys, I'm really enjoying the show, I have to say. I know a lot of people are saying that this is one of Netflix's best shows. I have to agree. I definitely think this is one of Netflix's best shows. I know I missed a week. I'm sorry about that. But that's basically it for this review. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what you guys thought of this episode. Overall, guys, as I said, loving the show. I really feel like it's just really intriguing overall. Constantly intrigued by this show, and I love that. And this episode was 10 times better than the first one. But that's my review. Hope you guys enjoy it. I'll see you guys in my next video, which will be my review for episode 3 of Bloodline. So I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.